If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? No. That's how so many organizations end up dying. Not fast, not in flames, but slowly decaying, getting into stasis. And you, my friend, don't want to end up there. One of the very first things you learn as a soldier is not to just discipline, but also the importance of breaking routine. I wasn't much of a soldier, but that's something that I really remember. Why? Because breaking routines guarantees that you don't get into this stasis. You don't become so predictable. On the one hand, it's very useful if someone's looking at you, trying to spy on you, that you don't have these routines that make it easier to expect what you're going to do. And on the other, it helps us with some sort of brain elasticity. We actually keep changing things in a way that keeps us fresh, keeps us aware and mindful of what's happening, because you won't allow yourself to be entirely taken up by routines. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can implement the same in your tech organization to ensure that it stays relevant, innovative, and finds opportunities to improve, as opposed to getting all comfortable in your comfort zone and remaining stuck there. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive coach and consultant, and I help people just like you create teams worth leading, because that's too short to lead mediocre teams. And teams stuck in this stasis, teams that never try to do anything unless they're faced with a big issue, with something that clearly yells, yes, this is a mistake, we have to change things up, are the teams that, again, probably won't go up in flames, but will never do anything amazing, anything remarkable you're going to look back at and see, yeah, those were a few really good years. And life's too short for that. Now, our thinking is this. Of course, you don't want to be screwing things up left and right every second. Nothing ever seems to be where you used to do it and how you used to do it. Every day you have to relearn everything anew. Of course not, right? That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that you want to drop it, that the if it ain't broke attitude. Think about, what can I break a bit? This is somewhat akin to a chaos monkey within the organization, but again, we don't want to create chaos. That's a bit too much. We want to ensure that we have healthy changes happening, healthy variability, in order to ensure that we don't lose the elasticity in the organization, that we don't get too rigid. In this video, we're going to cover why this is important, some examples from my own practice as a coach, and how you can do this, and examples I've seen with my clients. Elasticity is the ability to stretch without snapping. Organizations that don't work on this end up becoming so rigid, so fixed, that they cannot move as fast as needed when eventually real problems occur, or they miss out on the opportunities that were right there in front of them because nothing was broken, right? I don't know, think about Kodak. People like to talk about Kodak and how they essentially felt all good about what they're doing, about their business, till it got too late. The same will happen to your startup or to your tech organization if you don't realize the importance of working on your elasticity. This is a bit like yoga for a tech organization. We want to ensure that everything becomes flexible enough that you're healthy. We're going to take care of those joints that you have in order to ensure that the organization is healthy, nimble, agile, and can jump right at the opportunity where it appears. I'm sorry, I'm coming up with these examples. I'm winging it, and some of those sound a bit weird. I apologize. Now, let's start with something I can explain very easily, because this is about myself. Personally, what I do, every quarter, I work with the 12-week year format, if you know it. Every quarter, I come up with some experiments, things that I change in how I work, just to see how it acts. Some of those end up being tremendous successes. Others I decide to scrap at the end of the quarter. But for those 12 weeks, I get to try something new. And this spans across everything related to my work. So it can be the personal stuff, like how I organize my week. I have usually a routine about when I create this, when I record the podcast, when I write the article. Sometimes I try to shift things up. One quarter I tried to batch things. Another I tried to do everything in a single day. I tried to do different things to learn about myself, see what works better, and see where I get more ideas, less ideas, when I'm more energized or less. Another example was when I decided to do things differently with my clients. I decided for a quarter I will not give them any advice before specifically being asked to. I was just sitting there and listening and mirroring what I was hearing. And this is like what you hear about being the right way of being a coach, right? I decided after trying it out, because I heard so much about it, I realized that no, actually my sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. I don't come barging in where you have to do it like that, but I'm also not that annoying person only taking notes and mirroring what I'm hearing till they finally ask me what I think about something. No, my sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. Another example was when I decided to change how I approach getting new clients and ended up making every quarter for like the past 3 years, I'm doing a bunch of different experiments. That's how I ended up writing books. That's why I ended up being guesting on so many podcasts, etc. I decided to try something different every quarter and see what happens. And that has taught me what works better, what gets me to be in front of clients that I actually enjoy working with more, what energizes me, what gives me more ideas, and what drains me so much that I hate doing my job and I had to stop even before the end of that quarter's experiment. And all those are healthy experiments I learned. And the important thing is I keep being on edge. I keep having this elasticity. The point is not permanence. It's not that everything I change will necessarily become the right way of doing things. The point is adding enough spice, adding enough changes to ensure that I'm on edge. I used to call this the new car smell. You know that if you ever bought a new car, you know that for a while you enter the car and there's the new car smell. And that every time you go into it, it reminds you, yeah, this is new. You still have that feeling. Or if you ever, last time that you switched jobs or moved apartments and you notice that for a while, your brain was not doing things on autopilot. When you had to get to work or get back home, you were very aware of how you were doing things, where you were headed, taking the right turns, looking around you, and all of a sudden noticing the stores and the way, etc. That's also like one of those areas where your brain is so aware, it's so mindful. And I'm noticing that a lot now that we've moved countries and I'm seeing here in Rome left and right things, and I still feel like I have this constant new car smell as in my entire being. And I know that this too will start wearing out eventually. But by having the explicitness of making those different experiments, of trying things and seeing what happens if I do things like this or like that, we're forcing our brains to always be alert and more mindful. And again, not everything all at once, but having these experiments from time to time will help you maintain elasticity. So now the question is, how are you going to experiment with this in your organization? Here's what I recommend my clients do. We try to have an experiment run every couple of months or quarter, depending on your general availability and threshold to be able to run these experiments. I recommend having these experiments that are longer, so at least 2 months, nothing too short, but it can also be 3 months. And when we have these experiments, it doesn't need to be just anything. But I want you to find a hypothesis about something that might end up being better or more comfortable, or we might learn something. Have a hypothesis about why you're doing something, have a deadline for the experiment, and then, if relevant, communicate it to the relevant people, decide about the hypothesis, how we're going to run the experiment, when we're going to wrap it up and look at it and decide if we want to continue it or not, and then commit to it, put it on the calendar, get going. These can be personal for you, about how you want to change, like I talked about my routines, and these can also be about how the organization works. Let's go over a few quick examples of things I've seen my clients do and actually get some benefit out of. One was brain swaps, deciding that for a quarter, we're going to get 3 or so senior people from the entire organization, swap teams just for a quarter and see what happens. We knew it was not going to be permanent. We knew they will probably end up getting back to their teams, but we want to see what happens when we force this inter-organization brain swaps and see if communication gets better, if we get more more knowledge sharing going on around the teams, etc. And I think that experiment was an amazing one, because it would have been so much harder to just force people to have a brain swap for that long without creating this in the framework of an experiment. But once we tailored it as an experiment and we found those seniors that actually saw this and realized, hey, this is a good elasticity experiment for myself as well, we had this experiment and it was amazing. We noticed a bunch of things across the organization that we didn't notice prior, because now we had these people who were senior enough to understand how things work, but had that new car smell being in a new team within the same company to notice that there are opportunities left and right. That was an amazing example. Another one was a team that constantly had to tackle all sorts of quality issues, and the seniors were always burned out by the on-call, etc. And we decided that for a quarter, seniors were not allowed to be typing when they had to tackle an outage. When there was an outage, when there was a quality issue that popped up, not as in a bug report that we were going to tackle during the sprint, but something that we had to tackle right now, when those happened, the seniors who were on call were not those who were allowed to tackle it. They had other people in the team, mid-level engineers and juniors, who were their pairing partners for doing this, and they had to do things themselves. The seniors were there pairing with them and helping them, giving them ideas or telling them, oh yeah, I know what the problem is, but they could not do it themselves. And what we saw is that by the end of that quarter, quality got so much better, and not just that, when we did have outages, we ended up not needing solely the seniors to be on call. We had enough knowledge spread out throughout the organization by that point that we could allow others to come in, and the load on the seniors was dramatically lower. A win-win. And one last example is implementing squads or task forces for teams that were reluctant to try to have these OKR or objective or goal-driven teams. They still had these functional teams, the back-end team, the front-end team, etc. And we decided to frame an experiment of having a few of these squads created to go after the most important objectives that we could come up with for that quarter, and see what happens. See if the changes of the work make sense, if people like it or not, if we get more impact or less, etc. And that again was also an amazing success story. And not all of your experiments should be successes. I'm just sharing things that are success because I know that's what people like hearing about. But you definitely can allow yourself to try things that you're not sure are going to be an amazing success. This works because, yes, it makes sense to stick to best practices, but no one would ever realize new best practices if we keep sticking to the old ones. So this works because we allow ourselves the breathing room to have these changes happen from time to time, and we ensure that we don't get too rigid. We have enough elasticity go throughout the organization regularly. It might not be the entire organization every quarter, it might be a different team from time to time, but at least we get into the habit of changing things up. We don't get all too committed to a specific way of doing things. We know that experimentation can sometimes result in some amazing new discoveries, and we make the time and the effort to allow those discoveries to happen from time to time, not just hope that somehow spontaneously we find a better way without looking for it. If you want to see your team become more resilient and more robust, don't wait for things to break and then tackle those. When it does happen, okay, have a good postmortem. But instead, you can inject the elasticity right now. Have these yoga sessions for the organization start happening. So make the time, explain it to your team, and start working, start shifting, start stretching, so eventually you will find some better ways of doing things. And in the process, even if it takes a few iterations, what you end up getting is an organization that's more flexible, more agile, much less brittle, and usually a much more fun one to spend most of your waking hours working at. That's it for this video. If you have any comments, please let me know. I read all the comments. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps. You can get a bunch more stuff from me by checking out my newsletter. The link is in the video description, and I'll see you here in the next video. Ciao.